All right. Welcome everybody to the stream. My name is SimBuilder. Today and tonight, since it is almost midnight, we'll be looking at a whole bunch of different things that I've been working on in the background since basically I started working on this game back in 2016. So, years of work has led up to this. And what I'm going to try to do is summarize everything in one stream. Everything that I can show you that relates to this game. And what is this game? This game is a vehicle simulator. This game is a racing car game where players hop into a world, drive around, customize their car. It's like an MMORPG of the modern day world. And I must acknowledge the reality for what it is, and people have kind of stopped playing, haven't they? Although that does not mean your data disappears, and so that's a good thing. So everything you have done in this game still exists. Everything you want is obtainable through the player progression. And so some of the things we're going to be talking about is sometimes I'll pause flying around and I'll go like, okay, I have these other mind map places that will basically make things a lot easier to keep up with. So I have to remember with Mac, I can't see what viewport I'm looking into, which is a feature request, wink wink. If I click on Roblox Studio here, I can see this new project coming into existence. This one is triangle terrain based. It's a massive world. It's literally like just base plates and base plates and base plates of triangle terrain making up a giant map. And the whole idea here is to standardize building, kind of like how Fortnite does it. And Fortnite uses this kind of grid-based system, and with Roblox we can have like infinite scale of resolution. So I could insert a part here, and it can be as thin as this. That's the level of detail that is obtainable. Although in basic design, it helps to start at a kind of just a basic shape level. And what I like to think is, what would this take to build in real life? And the whole idea behind Summit Studios is, what is the feasibility of creating stuff inside of a video game that can be a blueprint or an inspiration for doing this in real life? And so a lot of the strategies, design, tactics, and everything that has to do with a stage-by-stage design process for line drawers, for Revit modelers, and everything far and few between. Summit Studios is building cloud technology by interfacing with literal blocks with words on them. And it's through this that enables open cloud technology a lot of the different connections and interactions with other applications, with other platforms, and we'll be talking about this in the podcast that I'll be launching. It's called the SimBuilder Podcast. It will go in depth through a lot of different stuff. I'm talking just like days and days of content. Right now I have 3 episodes lined up, and we'll be also interviewing people. So we can do episodes together where we do basically anything. You have a list of icebreakers over here. We can get personal. We can do like a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, sky's the limit. So going from here, this will be the guiding technology and the guiding kind of discovery of all these different products, all these different networks, and all these different people who are already talking about a lot of the topics that are foundational to the metaverse. And so some of these things include, but are not limited to, basically how a cloud-based company is formed, how people can create dynamics and accords between their individual avatar profile with the studios that they are identifying with, that they have joined as a group, and what that looks like from a perspective of payroll, what that looks like from a perspective of marketing and advertising, financial stability, HR, basically everything that makes up a company is visualized inside of this just intricately woven machine. And inside of every single object, there is a depth that can go into hyperlinks and many other things. So this is what makes Summit Studios unique. There's also entire metaphysical landscapes that just go deeper into society as a whole. I'm talking about the formation of inventorship through, I mean, it's insane. I have literally taken all of the words of how people form patents, model to patent process, and I visualize this in Roblox. This will enable people to bring their creations from the Roblox platform into the real world. And I even go as far as to identify project planning, project management, strategic planning, social media, media production, email marketing, literally everything that would be necessary to make it happen. And this is just the beginning. So with that being said, let's continue on and we'll continue to look at some of the objects in space. Everyone says, SimBuilder, fix the game. But what is the game? We have to identify what the game is, because fundamentally, if we just make the same thing over and over again, then we're not really getting anywhere. If we're just running on this hamster wheel trying to make money on Roblox, it's like this highway that you just get on and you can't get off. You have to do updates regularly. You can't like drop the ball or else your fans hate you. And it's just that kind of negativity that I want to try to get past. So I like to make architecture that speaks by means of what I'm doing with the context of basically what is being said. So the word creates the shape. And since the word creates the shape, that leads to further detail, further implications, and with that, the strategies and training tactics necessary to improve an entire people who are working from the cloud to virtualize a experience. And so it seems rather basic from your average person who is just looking at Roblox thinking, okay, I want to play a game. But to make a game, it can be as complicated as you want it to be. I like to overcomplicate things because I think it actually simplifies it in the end. And so the reason why Vehicle Simulator failed, I've actually done a lot of research into this, and it's lag, it's performance, It's just the frequency of updates, and all of this together brought the game down to basically a grinding halt because the game got too big and it was impossible to manage, and the programmer just quit. So now I'm picking up where the game is at the moment, trying to hire, recruit, train, staff, and manage everything about the game from an entirely new slate. However, I do think that it's important that players keep some amount of progression. And so with that, there'll be a kind of transitionary stage from a data format from the previous game to the new game. And that involves basically reading keys, identifying exchange rates, and then also identifying what stays and what goes, and how to compensate for what is removed. So with that being said, there's also a whole bunch of different things that I've been thinking of from a timeline basis of what age is the game centered around, and I've come up with a couple of different answers. One is the present day modern society. The other is kind of like this ancient Roman Greek time of like this kind of style. Because I think if there's a game that's kind of like an RPG and it's kind of standardized in this way, this is perfect for making little pathways. It's perfect for making buildings, and it's perfect for like making rivers and mountains. And I just think that that's like the basis of a good Roman game. And so there'll be churches, there'll be like cathedrals, there'll be it'll be very resource based. And the way that we're going to design this is a design language using aesthetics, colors. So everything inside of the color wheel has a meaning. And with that, if you combine in sequence different colors, then it implies different actions. For example, I think of mulberry as discord. I think of bright yellow as gilded. And I think of medium stone gray as like the first step in like building something. So like you insert something and then you've like reference something on Google and then you start building it. And so ideally using some amount of, I mean, and this is getting a little far ahead, but I'm just going to say it anyway. I would love to use artificial general intelligence with metadata in this kind of like point cloud basis of like outlining basic structures, telling it what it is, and then being able to just like build stuff using, I think it's called GIS, which is Geographical Information Systems. And with that, it'll enable basically like a conversion procedure from satellite data, including height maps and pathways and roads and buildings and different foundations like that. And what Summit Studios is trying to do is virtualize the world for a use case kind of problem orientated basis to try to provide more data, context, and visibility to be able to think and also place thoughts and intentions where they belong. And I think that's the important part of the mind map. That way, when people are forming teams to center around solving a problem, all they really need to do is all join the same place, the same team create. They can be from different groups, they can be from different companies, depending on the policy. And then we can all take a look at the same kind of problems that we're trying to solve and even replicate the solutions in a modular basis to like solve it for everybody. And I think that would be an incredible way to not only get the objective to where it needs to be, but also building a kind of sensible, collaborative way of developing. So the developer forum, Twitter, Discord, Guilded, Slack, and Google, and basically whatever you use to get the job done, whether it be like video conferencing or scheduling time. There's a whole bunch of different apps that I'll mention right now. Calendly, there's Google Hangouts, there's Google Calendar, and there's also an application that I'm working on that I will talk about later. So it'll be very fun. A lot of different things are happening. So how do we start? I actually have a place for that. And so inside of these brown boxes, I keep these links. And this pretty much goes to Google Drive files, it goes to articles written on Medium, on Twitter. It can go to basically any hyperlink. That color is visualized with electric blue. And from here, it can be a lot easier to understand what is Summit Studios. Well, I've actually created an overview. And so, little known fact, there's actually everything that's needed to solve the problem already exists. And then it's just a matter of connecting API and functions and putting it in the right place that will make this work. So these are all the different roles, from project management to moderation to IT and engineering to research and development to basically marketing through different applications like YouTube, Medium, Twitter, even customized websites. I recommend using Wix. Wix is incredible because it enables people to quickly build websites, and from that, it enables it's just pages of content to be visible immediately, and it's easily publishable. You can also connect merchandise stores, and with that, you can also go as far as I've gone to create automation to make team building as easy as buying a hat. So what else am I doing? Well, inside of each of these, of course, there's also links and descriptions about everything that makes up the company. There's also the problems that we're solving. There's also the motive for education and how we're building database architecture to solve all these problems. And then there's also the team management, everything that has to do with developer resources, contractor resources, so on and so forth. And there's also a manifesto inside of this. So there's so many different rabbit holes to jump down. And a lot of this is consolidated on my YouTube channel, SimBuilder. If you just go to playlists, there's a whole bunch of different playlists that I've constantly gone through, and I myself have listened to, and I just sequence them in ways that kind of give a pathway of recognition. And so definitely check those out. They'll be available on YouTube, so it's already there. And then there's also performance-based objectives and dynamics, like properties and basically things that need to be considered to make performance a forefront idea. Because games cannot perform on a variety of devices if the game is too complicated. Although streaming enabled definitely helps, I think there's still some problems to work out with that because it's just It's hard to implement sometimes. Okay, so now that I have fully explained why it has taken so long and how much work really goes into this, I would like to continue. So the next thing, looking at this map, I see two cities, both alike in dignity, and I see this channel that was never dug. Like I had to dig this channel to build, to connect the water together from this ocean to this canal. And I think that's analogous towards this channel orientation process of talking in a 2D interface. I think it's actually a lot better to break out of the traditional log and to actually place stuff directly into the game for what it is. And I think this directly corresponds with the legal process as well. Okay, so why am I spawning things from server storage? It's important to note that these heuristics, oops, I think I spelled it wrong there. Okay, so we have these pillars that make up the game. And basically this just stands for what is going to be important to keep track of, whether it be data, metrics, statistics, analytics, so on and so forth. I've created this tower that teaches people how to think. And using basically plugins that are widely available, like this RIP plugin, I've created a design language around what all of this means. It's always hard to know where to start, and that's why it helps to have an objective. So if you start with an objective, a task in mind, it's easier to filter what is on the screen and to float towards what we're talking about. And so this flows, and based on the connections that I've created, I've placed intentions inside of conversations inside of Discord. And here, my center is Summit Studios. I basically work inside of this server that I made on Discord to create the culture. And it's not perfect because people are not perfect. I think a lot of people have just trouble on a daily basis. And so people can kind of vent their emotions in a way that isn't very constructive or helpful. But with moderation and guides and resources, we can actually educate the users from a community standpoint. And so using volunteer and Discord bots, we've created different roles where people can assume responsibility. And so from here, what else are we working on? Well, we're working on a bunch of stuff. The metaverse is not limited to just gaming. The metaverse is actually something that is a agglomeration of politics, technology, resources, and the know-how to make it happen. And so what Summit Studios is starting with is just a contractor program where basically from 0 to 1, you buy a hat and you have access. With interview and consideration, of course. And so what's step one? Step one is enable cloud tours through QA. With QA cloud tours, we can add people to follow along a guide, and the guide will be able to verse themselves in the content and bring people along for basically tours. And so we'll have 3D virtualized tours based on the pathways defined by what we're trying to teach. And so there's all these different places with all these different designs, and it's hard to understand like how to go through and find what's needed. And whenever there's someone who like gets excited or says like this speaks to me, this is something I'm interested in, I want to encourage everybody to take note of it and later mention it through the feedback system. There's the website Summit Studios Games. You can write an email, you can write a Twitter message, basically get in contact through our customer support, and we'll be able to accommodate what we're trying to do. And based on what we're trying to do, it's always important to evaluate the value of a task completed. And so, a lot of people say like, "Oh, I can do this, this, and this. Here's my resume. This is what I am good at." That's a good inclination towards what people will communicate and try to do, but it's not foolproof. And so defining the problem and trying to work out what are the keywords, what are the concepts, what's the function, event, kind of interaction, what's the structure of the code? Is it in a server script? Is it in a module script, a local script? How does all of that interact together? And I think it's important to explore other different points of views. So this is really where the developer forum comes in, or just like creating a quick tweet capturing what we're trying to do and publishing it. And saying like, okay, let's make a network of people who are trying to do relatively the same thing. And then let's try to define the domains, the boundaries, like what game gets what, how does this function pertain to this other game? Can the theme be a transcendental quality that just enables people to work less because someone has already done it before? And then kind of using that principle of democratization to better monetize the game itself and to build a lifestyle that's worth living. So I've actually I've been kind of frustrated because on Twitter I used to get like hundreds of likes, and suddenly because of defamation from my previous coworker, I'm like nothing apparently, and I just don't think that that's right. So what I've trying to do to try to get around this is build an equal floor to be heard, to have a person's story and a person's understanding be able to converge in a way where the floor is held as equal. And this is justice by the root of it. And so everybody has the right to a fair and equal trial, and the developer relations team will have to work closely with these models and these guides to try to solve that problem from like a community standpoint. And so I like to use the question, how can we all be successful? I don't like to focus on negativity or limitations, but it's always important to impose our own limitations on the work that we try to do, because sometimes it's just too much, it's too stressful, it doesn't make sense, the circumstances aren't right. And so it definitely helps to kind of internalize the information and the challenge, and then apply methodological apply method a methical a methodal I can't even say that word. I'm not even going to try, but a methodological approach to solving the problem, reason through the mistakes, and get to a conclusion. And so if people can do that, then there's less stress. And if there's less stress, it's easier to work on the concept, it's easier to work on the system, and everyone's better for it. So just consider the implications of that. I also I like to bring up the basket case theory because I think humans are flawed and people are biased. So I love to point out corruption and just like acknowledge it, like, yeah, that's a thing. People are corrupt. It depends on just the severity level of what that corruption does to other people. I'm a firm believer in just nonviolence and like sticking to your own lane. And I believe that it's just people define themselves, people define their own personality and their own beliefs. So let's move on. That's a fun place to be because you can just basically have dialogue and conversations for hours. And because everybody has their own belief system and what they know is basically what they've seen, it helps to see life from all angles, all sides. And so in a world where people are kind of limited to a two-party system or like a couple of parties where the representatives make all the important decisions, I think Roblox is able to express a an entirely new social process where it's like people can learn using the internet, using like Reddit, using forums, using YouTube videos, and it just makes it so much better. And so once people get to that place of having stable housing, food, and internet, those are the people that we're looking to work with. And you don't need to be in an office building. You can be anywhere. So the remote work is definitely out there. And there's a lot of different platforms that enable, I think, a good business relationship, like Fiverr, Upwork, and basically things that facilitate like capitalism. And so I also think people form their biases on emotions towards an idea. And I think people need to basically shine the flashlight on their own ignorance for what the definition of words are, because so many times we just relay information that we've heard. We're like in this hearsay loop of I like this, I don't like that. And I think it's better to look at the actual word for what it is And that seriously helps to basically like get more relevant information into frame and then work with that. And so I really like to use books. Like I like to use Amazon. I basically have a bookshelf, and whenever I'm talking about something, I'm not an expert. Like I'm 24, so what I'll do is I'll just get a bunch of books that have to do with the topic. It can even be a textbook, and you just bring the book, and then you look through it. You get the table of contents. You think, okay, how does this problem relate to these words on this book? And it can really help to alleviate stress and anxiety because other people are working to solve the problems that everyone's worried about. And so that's a good thing because society gets better for it. Okay, so then it gets more complicated, and from the complication, all the aesthetic meaning is also kind of like imprinted onto each piece, each part, and it's plotted out on this it's like a spectrum. So there's a zero and a maximum, like a minimum and a maximum, and there's places that are kind of ecologically damaging or environmentally unfriendly, or like there's a whole bunch of different practices, and this is the kind of representation of here's the extents of what a civilization can be